The night Vivian Aldridge looked at Nolan Prescott across the quiet dining room table and calmly said she had gotten back together with her ex, something inside Nolan did not break. It simply went silent. Vivian's voice carried the same lightness she used when canceling dinner reservations or rescheduling a charity event. "I got back with my ex," she said while folding her napkin with careful precision. "Wish me luck." Then she tilted her head slightly and added something that made the moment even stranger. "Don't be sad." Nolan Prescott did not argue. He did not raise his voice. He did not even lean back in his chair. He simply looked at her for 3 quiet seconds and replied in a tone so calm it startled her. "Good luck." That was the moment everything in Nolan's life began to move in a direction Vivian had never anticipated. The strange part was that Nolan did not say another word that night. He finished his water. He paid the check. And he walked Vivian to her car like a man, leaving a polite business meeting. Vivian Aldridge had expected pain. She had expected anger. She had expected a confrontation dramatic enough to justify the decision she had already made in her mind. Instead, she received silence. And silence has a way of unsettling people more than anger ever could. Nolan Prescott lived in a restored brick townhouse in Greenwich, Connecticut, a quiet neighborhood where success rarely announced itself loudly. His work as a financial risk consultant had made him careful in ways that most people did not notice at first. He listened more than he spoke. He observed more than he reacted. And most of all, he did not gamble emotionally when the numbers stopped making sense. For 3 years, Nolan had believed his relationship with Vivian Aldridge was built on stability rather than passion. Vivian came from a respected Charleston family known for philanthropy and elegant social events. She was intelligent, polished, and socially effortless in rooms where Nolan often preferred the corners. Their relationship had always felt composed, organized, predictable, until one quiet dinner turned that illusion inside out. Vivian's ex-boyfriend, Reed Calloway, had recently returned to Charleston after several years working in London's finance sector. Reed was everything Nolan was not. Confident to the point of arrogance, charismatic in a way that filled rooms quickly, and comfortable living in emotional chaos that Nolan instinctively avoided. Vivian had reconnected with Reed only 2 weeks before that dinner. At least that was the timeline she admitted. But Nolan had already sensed something changing weeks earlier. Late replies, unexplained weekend trips to Charleston, a sudden distance that appeared in small pauses during conversations. Still, Nolan had chosen not to confront her, not because he was afraid, but because confrontation only matters when both people still want the same future. Vivian had already decided otherwise. 2 days after the dinner, Vivian posted a photo on Instagram from Charleston Harbor. She stood beside Reed Calloway on the deck of a sailboat under warm evening light. The caption read, "Some stories find their way back." Nolan saw the photo while reviewing quarterly risk reports late that evening. He stared at the screen for a moment longer than necessary. Then he closed the app and returned to his work. That night, he made a quiet decision. He would not compete for a place in someone's life that had already been offered to someone else. Instead, he began reorganizing his own. Nolan contacted his real estate broker the following week. The townhouse in Greenwich had always been a shared plan between him and Vivian. He decided to sell it, not out of bitterness, but because keeping it would mean preserving a life that no longer existed. Within a month, the property was listed privately through a discreet brokerage network that handled high-value homes quietly. The sale closed faster than expected. Nolan accepted an offer that gave him something more valuable than profit: freedom from a geography of his past relationship. Around the same time, Nolan accepted a consulting contract in Scottsdale, Arizona, working with a private investment group managing risk across several international portfolios. The opportunity had been presented months earlier. Back then, he had declined it because Vivian disliked the idea of relocating to the desert. Now that restriction no longer existed. Before we continue the story, pause for a moment and think about Nolan's decision here. If you were in Nolan's position, would you quietly rebuild your life like this, or would you have confronted Vivian and demanded explanations first? Drop your thoughts in the comments because these decisions reveal a lot about how people handle betrayal and self-respect. By early autumn, Nolan Prescott was living in a modern hillside home overlooking the McDowell Mountains. The environment felt entirely different from the structured coastal calm of Greenwich. Scottsdale offered wide skies, open distance, and a strange emotional clarity Nolan had not felt in years. His work expanded quickly. The investment group he joined valued Nolan's ability to see structural risks others ignored. Within 6 months, he was advising partners whose combined assets exceeded billions. The role demanded intense focus, but rewarded quiet competence rather than social performance. Nolan adapted well to that world. Meanwhile, Vivian Aldridge's return to Reed Calloway initially appeared effortless. Charleston social circles welcomed them easily. They attended charity galas, hosted dinner parties, posted photographs that suggested a reunion meant to be permanent. But stability had never been Reed's strength. 6 months after the Instagram post, Reed began traveling frequently for speculative investment ventures. His confidence sometimes bordered on recklessness. Several of those ventures collapsed quietly before reaching public attention. Money moved faster than accountability in those circles. Vivian began noticing details she had once ignored years earlier. Phone calls that ended abruptly when she entered the room. Unpredictable financial decisions. A restless ambition that never allowed Reed to remain satisfied with success for long. Vivian Aldridge had once believed Nolan Prescott lacked excitement. Now she began to understand that what she had called boredom might have been stability. The realization arrived slowly. And realizations rarely come without regret. Nearly a year after that dinner in Greenwich, Vivian sent Nolan a message. The text was short and cautious. Nolan, I hope you're doing well. I've been thinking about you lately. Nolan read the message while sitting on his patio overlooking the Arizona sunset. The desert air carried a quiet warmth that made emotional reactions feel slower somehow. He waited nearly an hour before replying. Thank you. I'm doing well. Vivian responded quickly. I heard you moved to Arizona. That must be a big change. Nolan typed a response slowly. Yes, it's been a good one. There was a long pause. Then Vivian wrote something that revealed more than she probably intended. I've been doing a lot of thinking about last year. Nolan read the message twice. He understood the direction the conversation might take. Before he answered, consider this moment carefully. If someone who left your life returned with regret, would you reopen that door or leave it closed? Tell us honestly in the comments, because people handle second chances very differently. Nolan eventually replied with a message that surprised even himself. I hope the past year helped you understand what you needed. Vivian stared at the screen for several minutes. She finally typed the question that had been building in her mind. Do you ever think we made a mistake ending things the way we did? Nolan leaned back in his chair and watched the mountains turn dark as the sun disappeared. His answer came with the same calm clarity he had shown the night she left him. No. Vivian's reply took longer this time. Why not? Nolan typed slowly, choosing his words carefully. Because decisions reveal priorities. Last year your priority was someone else. And my priority became building a life that didn't depend on that changing. Vivian read the message twice. She did not respond for a long time. Several weeks later, Nolan heard through a mutual acquaintance that Vivian and Reed had quietly separated. No scandal followed. No dramatic collapse. Just the quiet ending of a relationship that had never truly solved the reasons it failed the first time. Nolan felt no satisfaction hearing the news. Only a strange sense of distance from a chapter that already belonged to another version of his life. A year after moving to Arizona, Nolan Prescott stood inside a new office building overlooking downtown Scottsdale. He had recently been offered partnership in the investment firm he joined. The offer reflected not just his analytical skill, but the trust he had earned through consistency and restraint. The same qualities Vivian once considered boring. Sometimes life does not punish people who leave. Sometimes it simply continues rewarding those who quietly move forward. And Nolan Prescott had become very good at moving forward. Personal reflection. Human relationships often collapse not because someone makes a dramatic mistake, but because two people begin valuing different forms of stability. Vivian Aldridge's decision to return to Reed Calloway was not necessarily irrational when viewed through the lens of emotional nostalgia. Reconnecting with a past relationship can create a powerful illusion that unfinished stories deserve another chance. People often interpret familiarity as destiny when it is sometimes simply repetition. Nolan Prescott's response is psychologically interesting because it avoided the most common reactions to betrayal. Many people seek closure through confrontation, emotional explanations, or attempts to reclaim the relationship. Nolan instead shifted his focus towards structural change in his own life. Selling the home, relocating, and accepting a new career opportunity were not revenge actions. They were strategic decisions that removed him from the emotional environment that no longer served him. Vivian's later regret also reflects a common human pattern. People often recognize the value of stability only after experiencing its absence. Reed represented excitement, charisma, and unresolved emotional history. But excitement does not always translate into reliability. What makes the story compelling is that no one in it is entirely wrong. Vivian followed her emotions. Reed followed his ambition. Nolan followed his principles. Yet the outcomes demonstrate how priorities shape life paths over time. The story quietly reminds us that dignity sometimes appears not in what we fight for, but in what we choose to release.